Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned. Albino ranks every boss in Biomorph from easiest to hardest. If you're uninitiated, Biomorph is a 2D Metroidvania action platformer designed similarly to Hollow Knight, but with the central mechanic of being able to transform into enemies after you defeat them, and using their abilities to do damage or traverse the environment. If Hollow Knight's a 9, I'd give this game an 8, definitely worth a try if you like the genre. All footage is taken from my first playthrough, and I beat almost all the bosses first try, so you'll see me get hit constantly by attacks I'm trying to learn in the moment. That said, Biomorph is an easy game, especially for experienced Metroidvanians, so you can flounder your way through stuff and still come out with a victory in most scenarios. Also, this goes without saying, but spoilers ahead, not that it matters too much because the story's just kind of there. Starting from easiest and working our way to hardest. Number 13, Experiment ST74-1. While not as iconic as Experiment 626, ST74-1 has at least cornered the market on giant eggs that fire lasers and temporarily hatch when you beat the hell out of them enough. This is the introductory fight of the game, and as such the pattern is piss easy. It fires a laser at the bottom, then it fires a laser at the top, then it goes back to the bottom, and at any point if you do about 33% of its health and damage, it'll fall open and expose its little pre-born pterodactyl baby fetuses for you to abort. They take increased damage, so punch them until the egg puts itself back together again like Humpty Dumpty if he was pregnant, and internalize that your normal form punches, if mashed fast enough, will give you more DPS than the transformation they let you have in there. The monster is also slow, so it's bad for retreating to escape the laser. No need to use it at all. Number 12, Miratos. This boss is the king of making me look bad because he's designed to subvert instincts. You've got all these small platforms to jump between, but Miratos is a big enough target that when he's dashing back and forth out of the Ferox, he takes up multiple layers of those platforms, so jumping up out of the way can require more forethought than you forethought. I eventually found it better to just hang out at the bottom and inkling dodge my way through his body every time. The iframes you get for being squiddy are generous, to say the least. Once you get comfortable enough, you can also try letting off a pistol shot or even quickly punching him as he approaches you before immediately dodging past him, so you can still get damage during these windows. If you notice a slight delay between the next portal opening after his dashes, you know that's the one where he's just going to come out and sit there, so you can be ready with some hitboxes, and then just watch out for the radial bullet hell and disengage when necessary. Number 11, Gorgerzer. God bless ranged attacks. Too bad you don't have enough of them for this mutant spitting cock monster. For being the second boss in the game, this dude's got some pretty tight openings. You can only really get a couple punch combos off before you have to set up for the next attack pattern. If you've got the little helper chip, you can set that up to do some passive damage while you're dodging, but if you get hit, you have to resummon it. A good way to stay out of range of the melee attacks is to transform into Boomerang Guy, the one that flings his bone at people and then dies if it doesn't come back, according to the lore, and keep firing those as you retreat, but at this stage I wasn't messing with transformations too much, so you won't see it here. Number 10, Shrill. For this boss, however, transformations are goated, especially the mole, because he does a mole load of damage, and his lunging attack keeps him pretty safe from retaliation since it bounces you back a little when it hits. Also worth noting, he basically has a double jump if you jump and then hold up while you press Y, or whatever button does your lunge, so he's surprisingly flexible, especially before you get the actual air dash ability. Shrill is a dasher. Almost all his attacks are teleportation lunges, and you don't want to be in the corner when he blinks in diagonally from above, or you might get caught inside him and fired from the animal shelter. Basically, don't dodge toward the corner, and don't dodge until you see him move from that upper spot, or he might track you. Otherwise, you've got ground dashes you can dodge through when you notice the timing, and if he ever clings to a wall, I hope you're close to the other wall so you can wall jump up it and avoid the gastric belch beam. By now I've got the Combat Discat Memento for increased damage and Monster Fang for increased damage to bosses, so those two things stacked are pretty good for output. Number 9, Big Bad Robot. Oh damn, watch out guys, the Big Bad Robot is coming. Not a hard boss, all things considered, but it does like to move around a lot, so if you're gonna hit it with melee, just be prepared to dodge through it at a moment's notice. Once I got the Mecha Crash chip from Barrow Excavation, I never looked back. This melee weapon is a beast. I'm hitting over 100 damage per blast here, and while it's slow, it's not that slow. I also became decently fond of the Barbadrizzle, which sounds like a seasoning my mother would make that fittingly peppers enemies with machine gun burst fire. Also found in Barrow Excavation, by the way. There's some good shit down there. But yeah, the Big Bad Robot is not that big and not that bad. Number 8, Cleo. After you defeat the final boss and save your long-lost whatever Cleo, you are presented with a choice. You can either kill the final boss or take it over, like you've done to every other enemy in the game, but permanently. Cleo wants you to kill it, so if you don't, he, she, they fights you to try and stop you. Cleo does a lot of damage, but the moves aren't that hard to figure out. It's all about watching the telegraphs on their dash attack and making sure you aren't trying to heal when you're in the midst of running it. There's some other attacks sprinkled in with like some bombs, but they don't amount to much. At this point, I'd like to bring in the security drone transformation, so if the ground gets too hot, I can just fly above it for a bit and air dash up if I need more hang time. I felt nothing when I beat Cleo. Canonically, I would choose the other ending, where I just kill the entity, but so I assumed we were going to kill Cleo in this ending, and then we didn't, and I was like, oh, we just defeat them, become the entity, and then Cleo goes off somewhere and turns around and watches us sadly, and that's it. Should have killed him for fun anyway. Number 7, Buzz the Big Yellow Fly. I like how some monsters have Pokemon-esque names like Maratos and Gorgerzer, and then sometimes it's just Buzz the Big Yellow Fly, because I assume the scientist that discovered that one drank too much paint thinner. The mole strats work here too for the most part. Once you know what the boss actually does, you'll probably get hit less, but Buzz also requires you to use the current riding fish transformation to escape its giant screen-wide AoE it likes to do. It gives you like an hour to prepare for it though, so it's not that serious. You can also use the current to escape his triple spinning attack, but only if you get up there fast enough before he comes to your side, otherwise it's going to be pretty hard to dodge. For some of his grounded attacks, you can dodge through him to get to the other side. You just have to start the dodge really close to his body or you'll end up under his guts. If humans are 60% water, this thing is 90% bile. It's gross, and I would not want this to be my dog. Number 6, Model 37. Fun fact, it took 1,850 more models to go from this giant robot to akimbo shotguns. This fight is pretty much designed around the security drone transformation, but you'll probably switch off it when you run out of rockets, and you only really need it to hover over the electric attack that covers the whole floor. The drone is kind of awkward to control. It feels heavy, and it needs to recharge after a few seconds in the air, which I know is on purpose, so it can't just fly off into the sunset and break all the Metroidvania rules of traversal, but there's some jank associated with its static shock ability too, because the hitbox doesn't come out until like half a second after the visual attack does. It just feels delayed and makes it annoying to use in combat, but rocket spam feels good and effective. Another useful thing about the security drone is that you can heal in midair, even if you run out of lift and start falling back down, so finding openings for that is made all the more easy. Generally, you'll just be flying around, not staying in one place for too long, because the robot will start closing off areas you've been in with lasers that you can dodge fine as long as you keep moving. And then if you run out of rockets, you can go back to normal form and do jumping attacks or shoot them with your other projectiles. Number 5, Dust Moth. Dust Moth is a pretty neat fight with a lot of dodges required, but there's also a lot of ways to get it done out here. You'll be tempted to break the falling boxes with the mech transformation, but if you have that ion beam chip that shoots a humongous laser, you can use the boxes to jump high enough to actually hit the moth with them and shred his HP. I don't figure that out until way later in the attempt, so I waste most of them shooting just under his body, but yeah, that chip can be tons of supplementary damage while you're doing regular uppercuts on his body or shooting him with other projectiles. You can also transform into the sniper dude if you need more bullets, but I don't recommend using the laser beam ability because it has a bunch of end lag and you'll probably get hit for it. All in all, not a tough fight once you know how to dodge stuff and stop yourself from doing overly committal moves at bad times. Number 4, Roltaeon. I find some of these earlier bosses to be harder than some of the later ones because you have less traversal abilities to use for avoiding attacks. Like not having air dash in particular makes dodging these big, far-reaching ground attacks require a lot more precision. Roltaeon spins around the arena like a jilted Beyblade bouncing off walls and the ceiling trying to rip your HP. The real issue comes from the second half though, when tiny baby Beyblades get thrown into the mix as well. So you've got big Beyblade and baby Beyblade and baby Beyblade working together to be super annoying. I barely scraped my way out of this fight on the first try, so I'm one of the lucky ones. Number 3, Maiden of Protection. I never like when more than one thing is on the screen to watch out for at the same time, man. You got the Maiden of Protection, and then you got this other dude floating up there doing stuff in secret. He's a shady character, and it's not always clear what he's actually responsible for until it hits you. The worst part, though, is the Maiden's AoE Dazzle attack. That thing will jump scare you. There is almost no reaction time given to get away. If you're in the middle of an attack, you just got. Phase 2 is even better because the AoE gets bigger. It's like if someone gave you a middle finger and then someone with bigger hands gave you another one. It's also got a yellow laser you can't dodge through, which you only find out after you try to dodge through it, of course. I hate to camp a boss out with projectiles, but if you're going to punish me nonstop with unreactable BS for getting close, I feel a little less bad about it. Number 2, the Entity. The final boss of the game. You know what chip really destroys this boss is the one you get after you beat it, the hurricane thing. Jumping under it and using that shreds its HP significantly. Not that it helps you right now, but afterwards, if you want to see the other ending, you have to go back and beat the Entity again, so might as well have something that makes that a breeze for that one. Outside of that, the Entity is very focused on laser hell, covering much of the screen in lasers while you have to find the safe spots. It's low enough to the ground that you can jump and set up the ion beam portals, otherwise make sure you kill those sentry things when they come out so they can't hold you in place. I like bullet and laser health sections. I think they're fun to work around and they don't overwhelm me, so I wouldn't say the boss was super hard for me, but it is pretty demanding on execution. Number 1, Calibrex. The hardest boss in Biomorph is Calibrex, a roaming tank that fires non-stop homing rockets, even more after the second phase. Transformations can help a bit with this, like the spider-bot thing that emits noxious DOT gas clouds can be used to hit not only Calibrex in the beginning, but also auto-explodes any bomb that touches it, which is nice when Calibrex is moving slow like he does in the first phase, but the second phase completely destroys the strategy. It also sucks that you can't use the X and Y ability at the same time to generate two different sources of dot damage. They just blend into the same one so the ticks don't stack. For the second phase, I went with the Baby Beyblade transformation because it gets iframes during its charge attack, and that's super helpful when you're plowing through multiple explosives and a big tank boss, and you even have time to initiate a dodge after the charge if you end up inside the tank without taking damage if you do it fast enough. It's still pretty demanding, and you have to be real discerning with when you choose to attack and when you choose to dodge first and then attack. Like, it felt like cheese to do, but it was still hard to do, so I'll retain some honor. But that's gonna do it for this boss ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe, watch all my other videos, and click the blue join button underneath one to unlock the channel member transformation, and I'll see you guys next time.